First off, I wish to clarify that the payments to be made to the NIC contributors under the Economic Relief Program do not in any way constitute a grant or donation to the government of St. Lucia. In fact, this was a carefully thought out program of assistance developed by the NIC for the benefit of its contributors in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as is well known to all, is causing untold destruction to the global economy and is having an unprecedented negative impact on St. Lucia. It is also well known that with the lockdown, most businesses are closed, including hotels, which employ a high percentage of our people, resulting in significant layoffs, redundancies, reduced incomes, etc. In effect, there is little economic activity taking place, which is very likely to be the situation for the next few months. And so, given these extraordinary developments, it was necessary for NIC to at least investigate the possibility of providing some form of relief to contributors who are being affected by this crisis, bearing in mind that many of them were already inquiring as to how the NIC would help. In fact, we consider it our duty to assist our contributors where possible. Let me say that foremost in our minds was the need to provide support, but without compromising the long-term viability or the long-term survivability of the fund. Now, in assessing long-term financial sustainability or survivability for any social security, one of the most important metrics is the concept of depletion date or the life of the fund. Essentially, what this is really saying, or what this really means, is given the state of the social security scheme in terms of its reserves, its contribution income, benefits expenditure, which includes pension, sickness benefits, demographic factors such as mortality rate and retirement age, and the contributions currently being paid by both employees and employers, how long would the fund last before it is exhausted? Now, this is an analysis that is performed by an independent actuary, and in the case of NIC St. Lucia, an actuarial analysis is required to be done by law every 5 years. Now, based on the last actuarial results, the NIC depletion date is estimated to be the year 2050. That is in 30 years from now, which is the current life of the fund. I hasten to add that notwithstanding the concept of depletion date, social securities are never permitted to deplete their reserves, given their ongoing obligation to meet future benefits. In other words, by changing some of the variables I mentioned earlier, such as contribution rate and adjusting the retirement age, the life of the fund could be extended, as has happened in St. Lucia over the years. Of course, how well the investment portfolio is managed will impact the reserves as well as the life of the fund. Now, I am pleased to say that NIC St. Lucia is amongst the best in the Caribbean in terms of longevity and undoubtedly one of the strongest regional social securities. I think that's generally well known throughout the region. Let me also point out that before the board and management decided on this economic relief program, we undertook a detailed analysis which included checking with our actuaries to ascertain what impact the program would have on the life of the fund or what latitude we had to support such a program. NIC also looked at a number of scenarios involving, for example, cost with or without public sector workers, bearing in mind some public sector workers fall under the NIC Social Security Scheme. We also examined several scenarios in terms of the costs if, say, 30%, 40%, or 50% or 60% contributors submitted claims for the periods of 3 and 6 months. Now, the least cost scenario of $32.6 million for 3 months, as you would have heard in the Parliament, that is, if claims are received from only 30% of contributors, excluding public sector workers. Also, the worst case scenario for 3 months, if claims are received from 60% of contributors, which includes public sector workers, is $80.2 million. Of course, the final amount would be much less if public sector contributors are left out altogether, assuming they will keep their jobs, and also if the percentage of contributors claiming falls well below 60%. Now, it is important to note that based on the worst case scenario for 3 months, the program would reduce the life of the fund by only 7 months out of a total of 30 years, which I'm sure you will agree is quite low and should not be cause for concern, especially when viewed in the context of the much needed support to be provided to contributors at this time. Now, if the NIC were to agree to extend the program by a further 3 months, the overall reduction will be 14 months. But of course, we expect the final impact to be less than this. Let me emphasize that these relatively small reductions in depletion date and reserves do not in any way compromise long-term viability or sustainability of the fund, and still keeps St. Lucia NIC amongst the best and strongest in the Caribbean. Now, with respect to your question as to where the money is coming from, let me assure our contributors and the general public that the reserves of the NIC remain strong, and it is from these reserves that the economic relief program will be funded. The total assets of the NIC currently stands at approximately $2.2 billion. Further, NIC does have the liquidity to support the relief program with about $380 million in cash resources. The external audit of the NIC for the period ended 2019 is almost completed, and we should soon be in a position to submit to the responsible minister the annual report for onward transmission to the Parliament. The annual report will, of course, confirm those figures. Regarding your question as to whether NIC would be willing to extend the program past 6 months, let me clarify that the program is for an initial period of 3 months, that is April to June. After we have had a good sense of the number of persons affected, the ongoing impact on businesses, and the financial costs, the NIC may consider extending the program for a further period of 3 months. However, we have not considered extending the program beyond 6 months. As to how long the corporation will be able to maintain this program, we have only considered a maximum of 6 months and have no intention of going beyond that period. We should, of course, all hope that the situation in St. Lucia will improve by then. Does the NIC have an appetite to extend the mandate to add unemployment insurance as one of its benefits? I would say there is a compelling case for the NIC to do so, given what many of our contributors are going through right now in terms of economic hardship due to the loss of their jobs and, of course, being made redundant. As you know, our country is unfortunately vulnerable to external shocks. We did not cause COVID-19, yet we are feeling the negative consequences in a significant way. We also recall what happened during the global financial crisis in 2008. St. Lucia is also vulnerable, as we all know, to natural disasters such as hurricanes. And we've all witnessed the impact these external shocks can have on our country and our people. There is therefore a good case for the NIC to provide unemployment benefits as part of its normal offering. But as with everything else, this will come at a cost, which have implications for the contributions made by workers and employers. My board will certainly investigate that possibility and will be guided by the advice of the actuaries and consultations with all relevant stakeholders. In closing, on behalf of the board and management of NIC, let me say how pleased we are to have been able to make this relief program available to our contributors who have been affected by this global crisis at a time when that support is most needed. Let me assure our contributors and the general public that we are satisfied that we made a responsible decision and that the long-term survivability of the fund will not in any way be compromised. And very importantly, our contributors will be able to receive their pensions when they retire. Also, it is important to note that NIC St. Lucia is not alone in extending this support to its contributors. Indeed, many social security schemes throughout the world have been providing various forms of support in these unprecedented times. And finally, let me say that NIC St. Lucia has over the years provided significant yet deserving support to the needy and many persons in our country who have never contributed a cent to the NIC. And so it would be unconscionable if we did not extend a helping hand through this relief program to the people who actually contribute to the NIC in order to assist them to take care of their most basic needs in this very, very difficult period. I thank you.